Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are diving headfirst into the world of Huawei's NetEngine routers. Specifically, these three models really caught our eye: the NE40E X3 AC, the NE40E X3 DC, and the giant NE40E X8 DC. Just imagine needing a router that could handle insane amounts of data, stay up and running even longer than your most dedicated employee, and be as flexible as, well, a yoga instructor. That's what Huawei is trying to do with this NE40E series. We've got marketing materials, spec sheets, the whole 9 yards to really give you the full picture of how these things work.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how the marketing folks try to explain these things and make them exciting. And then you dig into the technical specs and it's like, oh, they really weren't kidding.
Exactly. It's like looking at a picture of a car versus actually hearing the engine roar to life. And speaking of different engines, the first two routers, the NE40 X3 AC and the Dash DC models, they're basically the same except for one major difference: AC versus DC power. So, full disclosure, I'm way more comfortable just plugging something into the wall than I am with all the ins and outs of electrical currents. Can you break it down for me and tell me why I should even care if my router is using AC or DC power?
Sure. Think about it this way. AC power is like, it's like the energy drink of electricity. It's readily available, it gets the job done. But it might not be the most sustainable option in the long run. DC power, on the other hand, now that's more like a slow-release energy bar. It's efficient, it's stable, it's perfect for avoiding those energy spikes and crashes. So with routers, DC power often means less energy consumption, which makes the accounting department happy. And it also means less heat, which your IT department will definitely love.
I see. So the AC model is like the workhorse and the DC is the marathon runner. Makes sense. Let's look at the AC version first, the NE40 X3 AC. And for those of you taking notes at home, the product code is 02355250. 5 slots for customization. Is that like tricking out your router with spoilers and such?
Pretty much. Each one of those slots lets you add modules that unlock new capabilities. It's like adding new apps to your phone. And even without all the extras, this router is no slouch. It's got 1.08 Tbit switching capacity. That's enough bandwidth for a small business. We're talking everyone streaming 4K cat videos at the same time. And you still wouldn't see a single buffering icon. It's amazing.
Wow, so much for the myth about hurting cats. We're talking some serious data muscle here, but I imagine all that power must come with, well, some heft, right?
You're right. The spec sheet says 52 kilograms when it's fully loaded. That's about the size of a small adult.
At least you don't have to feed it snacks. So now let's move on to its sibling, the NE40E X3-C, product code 02351596. Similar specs, different power source. What else is different?
Well, it's a bit lighter, clocking in at around 42 kilograms. That might not seem like a huge difference. But in a data center that's packed with these things, every kilogram makes a difference, believe me.
Yeah.
And going back to the DC power being more efficient, well, that means less heat being generated, which is a big deal, especially when you're trying to keep your server room from turning into a sauna.
Yeah, exactly.
Less heat means you don't need as much air conditioning, which saves energy and money in the long run. It's a win-win, really, especially if you're trying to be environmentally conscious.
Absolutely. So we've got our efficient siblings, perfect for different scenarios, but now I want to talk about the big brother, the one that makes everyone else look tiny. Let's talk about the NE40E X8-DC, product code 02351930.
Now, this is the one that gets me really excited as a tech enthusiast. If the X3 series is for what businesses need today, the X8-DC is prepared for the challenges of tomorrow, that's for sure.
Okay, so no more messing around. We're talking big leagues now. What makes this router the heavyweight champion?
Well, instead of 5 slots for add-ons, this one has 11. You could practically build a small data center inside this thing. It's incredible.
11 slots. I mean, that's like the router equivalent of a mansion. But let's talk about the muscle behind those expansion options. How much raw power are we talking about here?
Okay, get this. We're talking 7.08 TBPs of switching capacity.
Wow. Okay, so that's 7 times the bandwidth of the X3 series. That's insane. But for someone like me, I need some help visualizing that. Paint me a picture. What do I need that much horsepower for?
Okay, imagine this. You're running a high-frequency trading platform. Okay, every millisecond matters. We're talking about serious money being made or lost based on how fast you can move information. The NE40E X8-DC, with its 2800 MPPs forwarding performance, that can handle it. It's like having a supercomputer dedicated to making sure your network doesn't even hiccup.
So this is for people who need their internet up and running every second of every day. And speaking of which, the spec sheet mentions something about redundancy. Is that just a fancy way of saying backup?
It is a backup, but like on another level. We're not talking about just having a spare tire in your trunk. This router has a backup for everything: power supplies, fans, even the switch fabrics. You know the core components that actually direct the flow of information. If one fails, there's another one ready to instantly take over. It's like having an understudy waiting in the wings for every single part of a play.
So it's like having an entire team of engineers on call 24/7. That's wild. But even with the best care in the world, things break down eventually, right? What's the lifespan on something like this?
So if you look at the MTBF, that's mean time between failures, it's built to last. We're talking 21.91 years.
21 years. That's longer than some marriages. This thing is an heirloom. All that power must require some serious juice, though, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. The NE40E X8 DC needs special DC power cables, which isn't that surprising considering how much data it's moving around.
Right, we're not talking about your average home router here. This is like industrial grade stuff. So to sum it up, we're talking about a router built like a tank. It runs like a race car, and it's got the lifespan of a tortoise. Pretty impressive. But I think some people out there might be thinking, okay, that's cool and all, but why should I care?
Yeah.
What's the bigger picture here?
The big picture is that these routers, especially the NE40E XHDC, these are the backbone of our crazy connected world. Think about the massive data centers. You know, the ones that power everything from cloud computing to AI? They rely on routers exactly like this one to make sure information keeps flowing. These aren't just hunks of metal and plastic, they're the unsung heroes. They let us stream movies, video chat with our friends and family, and even work remotely, all without even thinking about how complicated it is behind the scenes.
That's a good point. So you're saying while everyone's busy with the latest smartphone app, these routers are quietly keeping the entire internet from just collapsing. That's a lot of pressure.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how important it is to pick the right tool for the job, whether that's the reliable workhorse, the X3, or the powerhouse, the X8 DC.
So we've covered the reliable workhorses and the absolute powerhouses, but one thing that really stuck out to me when we were looking at the marketing stuff was this focus on flexibility and customization. I get the feeling those 11 slots on the X8 DC aren't just for show, right? What kind of customization are we talking about here?
It's all about being able to adapt to whatever you need the router to do. So those slots let you add modules for totally different types of connections. Like fiber optic cables, for instance, are becoming more and more important for transferring data crazy fast.
So let's say my company relies on having the fastest internet possible. I can just basically like soup up my router so it can handle it.
Exactly. And it's not just about speed. There are modules for boosting security too, which is a big deal. Well, with all the hackers out there these days. You can even find modules that are specifically designed to make things like video calls or even online gaming run smoother.
Wow, so it's like you're building your perfect router piece by piece, instead of just being stuck with whatever the store sells you. That's really cool.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the best part is that if you need more power or a specific feature down the road, you can just upgrade your router. You don't have to buy a whole new one, which is really nice.
Earlier, you were saying how the X8 DC is ready for the challenges of the future, and that's kind of what this sounds like to me, right? Being able to customize and change with the times, that's the key to making sure these routers don't become obsolete.
You hit the nail on the head. The one thing that's certain in tech is that things are going to keep changing. The NE40E series, with how flexible it is and all those options for customization, it's built to change with the times so businesses and organizations can stay ahead of the game.
That's a great point to end on, I think. It's not just about the tech specs you can read about today, it's about the potential these things have. They can adapt and grow as the digital world changes, which is really cool to think about.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole field so fascinating, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just about wires and circuits. It's about how we can use this technology to connect with people, talk to each other, and come up with new ideas we never could have dreamed of before.
Well said. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Huawei's NetEngine routers. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about these powerful machines, and more importantly, about the important role they play in keeping our increasingly connected world, well, connected.
And remember, the world of technology never sits still. Stay curious, keep exploring, and never ever stop learning.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.